Story 1, The Frozen Broadcast. The CB radio had been broadcasting my own death for the last 43 miles. Not a prediction, not a warning. A live play-by-play of me dying in ways that hadn't happened yet, narrated in my own voice with perfect clarity through the static. And now Robert Hayes reaches for the brake pedal, my voice crackled through the speaker, but his foot passes through it. He's becoming transparent. He can see the road through his own hands now. He's screaming, but no sound comes out because his throat is already gone. I looked at my hands, solid, real, gripping the steering wheel of my Peterbilt so hard my knuckles had gone white. I'd been hauling refrigerated seafood from Anchorage to Fairbanks along the Dalton Highway for 11 years. I knew every truck stop, every dangerous curve, every place where the permafrost made the road buckle. I knew what was real. This wasn't real. Except it kept happening. The broadcast had started at milepost 197, right after I'd passed the last fuel station for 130 miles. At first, I thought it was interference, some trucker's kid playing with a radio. Then I heard my name. My full name, Robert William Hayes, my truck number, my license plate, details nobody should know. "He's trying to change the channel now," my voice said through the speaker. "Turning the dial, but every frequency is the same. Every frequency is his death. Channel 19, Channel 21, Channel 9, all of them broadcasting the same thing, the end of Robert Hayes." I'd already tried that. Every channel was the same. I'd tried turning the CB off, but it kept broadcasting anyway, powered by nothing, the power light dark while my voice continued its narration. The date was January 9th, 2024. Temperature outside was minus 43 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun had set hours ago, and it wouldn't rise again for another 5 hours. The Dalton Highway stretched before me, a narrow corridor of ice between walls of snow that climbed 15 feet high on either side. The road crew had plowed yesterday, but another storm was coming. I could see it in the distance, a wall of white approaching from the north. "He's thinking about his daughter now," the radio said. "Sarah, age 7. He missed her birthday last week. He always misses her birthdays. He tells himself it's for the money for her college fund, but really it's because he's afraid of being a father. Afraid of failing her the way his father failed him." My breath caught. That was true, all of it. How could the radio know that? "He's wondering how the radio knows," my voice continued. "He's feeling the fear now, really feeling it. His heart rate is 112 beats per minute, 114, 119. The fear tastes like copper in his mouth, like blood." I did taste copper. My tongue had found a cut on my inner cheek that I didn't remember getting. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, 2 tunnels of light cutting through absolute darkness. On an ice road, you don't use your high beams unless you want to blind yourself with reflection. The ice was black, packed down by dozens of trucks making the run north to the oil fields. Black ice under black sky. The only way to tell where the road ended and the void began was the reflective posts every 100 feet. Except some of the posts were missing now. I counted 7 posts. 8, 9, no 10th post. I slowed down, my Jake brake growling as I dropped from 50 miles per hour to 30. The missing post should have been right there. There was nothing there, just darkness. The road seemed to continue, but without the post, I couldn't be sure where the shoulder ended. "He's slowing down now," the radio narrated. "He thinks he's being careful, but there is no careful anymore. There's only what happens next, and what happens next is that he sees the other truck." I saw it. A Kenworth coming toward me in my lane, headlights blazing, on a 2-lane highway with nowhere to go. I laid on my horn and swerved right, toward where the shoulder should be. My trailer swung wide, 40,000 pounds of frozen fish sliding on ice. The Kenworth passed me on my left, so close I could see the driver's face in my window. It was my face. Same beard, same scar on the left cheekbone from a bar fight in Deadhorse 12 years ago, same green eyes. He was looking right at me as he passed, and he was smiling. My trailer found the shoulder, or something beyond the shoulder. The cab tilted right, gravity pulling me toward the passenger window. I cranked the wheel left, fighting it, feeling the truck's weight shift. 13 years of driving instinct took over. I didn't brake. I accelerated, powering out of the slide, pulling the trailer back onto the road through sheer momentum. The truck straightened. I was back in my lane. The Kenworth was gone. I checked all 3 mirrors. Nothing behind me, just empty road and dark. Ness. He thinks he avoided it, the radio said. He thinks he's safe, but he's been off the road for 7 minutes now. He just doesn't know it yet. I looked at my dashboard clock. 9:47 p.m. I looked at my GPS. Mile marker 240, driving north, everything normal. He's looking at his instruments, my voice narrated. They tell him everything is normal, but instruments can lie, or rather instruments show what they're designed to show, and he's not in a place where those measurements mean anything anymore. I pressed the talk button on my CB. This is Robert Hayes, northbound on the Dalton at mile marker 240. Anyone out there? Static. He's trying to call for help, the radio said. But there's no one to hear him. He left the world at mile marker 233 where the 10th reflector post should have been. He drove through the gap. Now he's somewhere else. Somewhere that looks like the Dalton Highway but is. My hands were shaking now. I forced myself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I'd driven this road in whiteout blizzards. I'd driven it with failing brakes and a full load. I'd driven it when my father died and I got the news over the CB. I didn't panic. But I was panicking now. The temperature gauge on my dashboard was dropping. -43, -51, -68. That wasn't possible. Even in January, even at night, the Dalton didn't get below -60. -79. -92. The windows were frosting over from the inside. I could see my breath, thick clouds of vapor that hung in the air too long, that moved wrong, that seemed to have weight and substance. He's noticing the cold now, the radio said. Real cold, the kind of cold that exists in the spaces between things, the cold of nothing, the cold of nowhere. I cranked the heater to maximum. The air coming from the vents was cold, not cool, ice cold, blowing frost. -115 degrees. The steering wheel was burning my hands with cold. I could feel ice crystals forming in my lungs with each breath. My eyelashes were freezing together when I blinked. And then I saw the lights. Not headlights, structure lights. A building ahead on the right side of the road lit up like a truck stop. I could see the parking lot, could see other trucks parked there. 5 trucks. No, 8, no. I couldn't count them. Every time I tried to count the trucks in the lot, the number changed. The building itself kept shifting. Sometimes it was a single-story truck stop. Sometimes it was 3 stories. Sometimes it had a tall radio antenna. Sometimes the antenna was a cross. Sometimes the cross was inverted. He's going to pull in, the radio said. He knows he shouldn't. He knows this place is wrong. But the cold is in his bones now, in his blood, in his brain. The cold makes decisions difficult. The cold makes survival the only thought. I was signaling right. I was slowing down. I was pulling into the parking lot even though everything in me was screaming not to. The other trucks in the lot were Peterbilts. All of them, all the same model as mine, all the same color, red. I parked between 2 of them and killed my engine. The radio kept broadcasting. He's getting out now, opening the door, stepping down onto ice that's too smooth, ice that's too black, ice that reflects his face wrong. Reflected Robert has too many teeth. Reflected Robert's eyes are too far apart. I looked down at the ice. My reflection looked back up at me. The radio was right, too many teeth, eyes spaced wrong, and my reflection was moving independently, not mirroring me. Reflected Robert waved. I didn't wave back. The truck stop had a door, red metal door with a window. Through the window I could see inside. A counter, coffee pots. A man behind the counter wearing a trucker's cap. Wearing my face. I walked to the door. The cold didn't hurt anymore. I couldn't feel my fingers or toes, couldn't feel my face. The cold had become everything, become the only reality. The door opened before I touched it. Warm air spilled out, except it wasn't warm. It was the absence of cold, the neutrality of nothing. Inside, 7 men sat at tables. All of them were me. All of them were Robert Hayes, different ages. One looked 19, barely old enough to drive. One looked 70, face like worn leather. All of them were eating breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast. The eggs were moving. "He's inside now," every CB radio in the parking lot said in unison, my voice echoing from 7 trucks. "He's seeing the others, the other Roberts, the ones who drove through gaps on other nights. The ones who are still here will always be here." The Robert behind the counter smiled at me with too many teeth. "Coffee, Robert." "What is this place?" My voice sounded wrong, distant. "Mile marker 233.5, he said. "The place between places, you drove through the gap. The road crew forgot to replace that post 3 days ago. Forgot, or didn't forget. Maybe they leave. Gaps on purpose. Maybe they know what the gaps do. Maybe they need to feed the nowhere." The 70-year-old Robert looked up from his eggs. "You get used to it after the first year." "Year? Time's different here," the 19-year-old Robert said. "I've been here 6 days or 60 years, both, neither." I turned back to the door. Through the window, I could see my truck, could see my reflection in the ice still waving, could see something behind my truck, something huge, made of ice and darkness with too many limbs and no face at all. "He's thinking about running," the CB radio said. "But there's nowhere to run to. The nowhere goes on forever. And he's so cold now, so very cold, cold enough that stopping doesn't seem bad, cold enough that staying seems like the warmest option." I sat down at a table. The Robert behind the counter brought me coffee. It steamed, but the steam was black and it fell instead of rising. I drank it anyway. Outside, another truck was pulling into the lot. A red Peterbilt. I watched the driver get out. Watched him look down at his reflection. Watched his reflection wave while he stood still. The CB radio in my truck crackled to life one last time. And now Robert Hayes understands. He's not leaving. No one leaves. The nowhere keeps what it takes. He'll sit here with the other Roberts, eating eggs that move, drinking steam that falls, waiting for the next Robert to arrive. Because there's always a next Robert, always another gap, always another trucker who doesn't see the missing post until it's too late. The new Robert was walking toward the door now. I waved at him through the window. He looked at my face, his face, our face. I watched the understanding hit him, watched the hope drain away. The door opened. He came inside. "Coffee, Robert?" the Robert behind the counter asked. He sat down next to me. I could hear his CB radio from here broadcasting his death, except his death wasn't ending. It was just changing form, becoming this, becoming forever. Outside, the thing made of ice and darkness moved between the trucks. Patient, waiting, it had all the time in the world. We all did. Story 2, the wait. Patricia Sullivan's load had gained 4,000 pounds in the last 20 minutes, and her axles were starting to scream. She de-weighed in at Whitehorse at precisely 63,000 pounds, well under her 80,000-pound limit for the Dempster Highway Ice Road. Now her onboard scale read 67,000 and climbing, 67,200, 67,800. Something was getting heavier in her trailer, and physics had stopped making sense somewhere around mile marker 82. The load was supposed to be mining equipment, drill bits, steel pipe, industrial tools heading to Inuvik. She'd loaded it herself, checked every crate, secured every strap, nothing living, nothing that could shift, nothing that could grow. 68,400 pounds. Her Freightliner groaned, the suspension bottoming out on ice that should have been smooth. She'd de-driven the Dempster for 6 years, every winter hauling freight to the Arctic communities. She knew this road. Knew that between Fort McPherson and the Mackenzie River crossing, the road ran straight and flat for 43 miles. No hills, no grades. Her transmission shouldn't be hunting for gears like this. But it was, dropping from 12th to 11th, 11th to 10th. The engine RPMs climbing, roaring, struggling like she was climbing a mountain. The road ahead was flat. Patricia checked her mirrors. The trailer's tandem axles were sinking into the ice, cutting grooves that shouldn't exist. Ice roads were packed hard enough to hold 100,000 pounds. Her trailer was cutting through like it weighed 1,000,000. 69,200 pounds. She grabbed her CB. This is Patricia Sullivan, southbound Dempster, mile marker 79. Anyone copy? Static, then a voice. Old man's voice, thick accent she couldn't place. You're hauling it now, aren't you? The weight. Who is this? Don't matter, you picked up the weight back at Whitehorse. Something got into your load, something that gets heavier the farther you drive. Keep going and it'll pull you right through the ice. Right through the earth. Keep going and you'll sink forever. That's not. Weight S at 70,000 now, the voice said. I can hear it in your engine. I can hear your axles bending. You've got maybe 10 miles before something breaks. Maybe 5 before you hit water. Patricia's hands tightened on the wheel. What is it? What's in my trailer? Can't say what it is. Can say what it does. Gets heavier. That's all it does. Takes mass from somewhere else. Somewhere with more mass than we got. Pulls it through. The weight comes from some place where weight works different. Some place where heavy is the only direction. The old man's voice dissolved into static. 70,800 pounds. Pat. Risha's heart hammered. She'd been driving for 19 years, had 3 kids, had a mortgage, had a perfect safety record. Had never believed in anything that couldn't be measured, weighed, explained. But she could feel it now, the weight, not just in her axles or her springs. She could feel it in her chest, pressing down on her lungs. Could feel it in her skull, pushing behind her eyes. The air in the cab felt thicker, heavier, like breathing water. 71,600 pounds. The transmission dropped to 9th gear. Her speedometer read 38 miles per hour and falling. The engine howled. Outside, the temperature was minus 39 degrees, and the ice stretched endlessly under her headlights, white under black sky, the road markers reflecting red and white in perfect intervals. Until they weren't perfect anymore. Patricia counted the markers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 was too close to 10. 12 was too far from 11. The spacing was wrong. The distances were changing. Either the markers were moving or space itself was compressing under the weight. 73,200 pounds. She had to pull over, had to stop, had to get out and open the trailer and see what was happening back there. Patricia eased off the accelerator, letting the Freightliner slow naturally. Didn't touch the brake. On ice, you brake smoothly or you don't brake at all. She found a wide spot in the road, or what looked like a wide spot, though the proportions seemed wrong. The shoulder looked both 10 feet wide and 10 inches wide simultaneously, the distance refusing to settle into a single measurement. She put the transmission in neutral and set the parking brake. The truck sank 3 inches into the ice. 74,900 pounds. Patricia grabbed her flashlight, pulled her parka hood up, and opened the door. The cold hit her like a physical force, but it wasn't natural cold. Natural cold was clean. This cold was heavy, dense, like the air itself had gained mass. She stepped down onto the ice. Her boots sank in, not broke through, the ice held. But her feet left deep impressions like she weighed 500 pounds. She took another step. Another. Each footfall sank deeper. By the time she reached the trailer, she was walking in ice trenches 6 inches deep. The trailer's rear doors were closed, secured with the same seal she'd attached in Whitehorse. Seal number TX47834, unbroken. She broke it, pulled the pin, opened the doors. Inside was darkness, absolute darkness. Her flashlight beam penetrated maybe 2 feet before the light just stopped, cut off by nothing, absorbed by something that shouldn't exist. Patricia had loaded this trailer. 24 crates of mining equipment arranged in 4 rows of 6. She could see the first row, could see the crates, stenciled with shipping codes, strapped to the deck. Beyond the first row was the darkness, thick darkness, darkness with substance. And in that darkness, something breathed. 76,700 pounds. Jesus Christ, Patricia whispered. The breathing was slow, rhythmic. Each exhale pushed more darkness out of the trailer, rolling toward her like fog, except fog didn't sink. This darkness fell. It poured out of the trailer and down onto the ice and spread in a pool that had depth. Patricia stepped back. The darkness flowed toward her boots. When it touched her feet, her legs buckled. She caught herself on the trailer door, but her knees were shaking with effort. Standing suddenly required immense concentration, like fighting gravity that had doubled. The darkness was making her heavier. She tried to close the trailer doors, couldn't lift them. They weighed hundreds of pounds now, far more than she could move. The darkness kept pouring out, spreading across the ice, a pool 20 feet wide now, 30 feet 40. And something was emerging from the trailer. Patricia saw it in glimpses, a shape, a mass. It moved wrong, pushing itself forward with limbs that bent too many times, that had too many joints. Its surface wasn't skin or fur or scales. It was texture without substance, like looking at static, like visual noise made physical. It pulled itself out of her trailer 1 foot at a time, each movement causing the entire truck to sink lower into the ice. Water was seeping up around the tires now. Dark water, thick water. 79,100 pounds. The thing had a head, or something that served as a head. No eyes, no mouth, just a concentration of wrongness, a focal point of mass. It turned toward Patricia. She ran. Running was agony. Each step was like running through water, through sand, through concrete. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed for air that was too heavy to breathe. She made it 10 feet, 20 feet, 30. Behind her, the truck groaned. Metal screamed. Ice cracked with sounds like gunshots. Patricia looked back. The thing was standing. NG beside her Freightliner. It was huge. Maybe 8 feet tall, maybe 80. Scale refused to work properly near it. It was warping space, compressing it, making distance meaningless. It reached out with a limb, touched the truck's cab. The Freightliner pancaked. The cab crushed down as if stomped by a giant, the metal folding like paper. The trailer jackknifed, tipping, falling onto its side. The ice beneath it shattered, and the whole rig started sinking. Not through the ice into water, through the ice into nothing, into a hole that had no bottom. Patricia watched her truck disappear into a rent in reality, pulled down by weight that exceeded what physics allowed. The thing turned toward her again. Patricia ran harder. The road ahead looked impossibly far away. She'd run 100 yards. The road should be right there. But it was. It was receding as fast as she approached, space stretching, making every step meaningless. The weight was in her bones now, in her blood, in her thoughts. Thinking became difficult. Each thought had to push through resistance, through density. She tried to think of her children. Katie, age 14, Marcus, age 11, little Sophia, age 8. Their faces were fading, compressed by the weight into abstract concepts. She fell. The ice beneath her cracked, not from impact, from weight, from her body suddenly weighing tons. She tried to stand, couldn't, her arms wouldn't lift, her legs wouldn't move. She was pinned to the ice by her own mass. Behind her, the thing approached. She could hear it moving, each step cracking ice, each step pulling more reality into its impossible density. It stopped beside her. She could see it at the edge of her vision. It reached down. When it touched her shoulder, Patricia understood. The weight wasn't adding to her. The weight was revealing what had always been there. Mass from other dimensions, from other possible versions of herself, all compressed into this moment, this body. She was feeling the weight of every decision she'd made, every path she'd taken, every version of Patricia Sullivan that existed in quantum superposition. The thing was showing her the truth of existence. That matter was mostly empty space. That atoms were mostly nothing. That she was mostly nothing. And nothing could have infinite mass if you looked at it right. Patricia sank into the ice. Through the ice. She fell through darkness that lasted forever and no time at all. Fell through layers of reality, each one pressing down on her, adding weight, adding mass, adding density. She fell past the earth, past matter, past physics. She fell into weight itself, into the place where weight lived, the place where gravity was a living thing, a creature made of force and mass and the space between moments. And then she stopped falling. Patricia stood on ice again. The Dempster Highway stretched before her, mile marker 82. Her Freightliner idled behind her exactly where she'd been when this started. Engine running, lights on, scale reading 63,000 pounds. She checked her watch. 11:43 p.m., the same time as before. Nothing had changed, nothing had happened. Patricia climbed back into her cab, started driving, made it 3 miles before she noticed. Her wedding ring had sunk into her finger, not tight, embedded. The gold band was disappearing into her flesh, pressed into her by weight she couldn't shake. She tried to pull it off. It wouldn't move. The ring was part of her now, merged with bone. She looked at her hands. They looked normal. But when she focused, really looked, she could see through them, not transparent, denser. Like her hands occupied more space than they appeared to, extended into directions she couldn't see. Patricia kept driving, made it to the Mackenzie River crossing, took the ice bridge across, made it to Fort McPherson, kept going, reached Inuvik 12 hours later and delivered her load. The mining equipment was still there, all 24 crates, nothing missing, nothing added. The trailer was empty except for what should be there. But Patricia was different. She weighed herself at the truck stop. The scale read 143 pounds, same as always, but her footprints in the snow were 3 inches deep. Other people left quarter-inch impressions. Patricia left cavities. She tried to pick up a coffee cup. It shattered in her hand, crushed by pressure she couldn't control, tried to shake hands with the dispatcher, felt his fingers crunch, heard him scream. Patricia looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked normal, but the mirror was cracking under her gaze, spiderwebs spreading across the glass, fracturing from the weight of her image. She understood now. The thing hadn't added weight, it had awakened it. Her mass was quantum, existing in multiple states. She was light and heavy simultaneously. She was here and nowhere. She was Patricia Sullivan, and she was the space between atoms made manifest. She drove home, hug. Jed her children. Each hug left bruises, made them gasp. She had to learn to touch them gently, had to learn to exist without crushing everything around her. But at night, lying in bed, Patricia could feel it. The pull, the weight calling to her. The darkness between atoms singing its song of mass and gravity and the infinite density of nothingness. She knew she'd go back eventually. Knew she'd return to the Dempster Highway, return to mile marker 82, return to the place where the weight lived. Because she was heavy now, too heavy for this reality, too dense for this dimension. And the weight wanted her back. Story 3, The Frozen Frequency. Marcus Chen's eyes had been bleeding for 67 miles, and the CB radio was teaching him mathematics he shouldn't understand. Not algebra, not calculus. Mathematics that described the geometry of suffering, the topology of cold, the equations that governed how fast human tissue froze when consciousness refused to let it die. The blood ran from his tear ducts in thin streams, freezing before it reached his cheekbones. The ice crystals caught the dashboard lights, made his face glitter red and green. D stopped being afraid around mile marker 34. Fear required a baseline of normalcy to contrast against. Marcus had forgotten what normal felt like. The radio spoke in frequencies that shouldn't exist, between standard CB channels, between the spaces where signals lived. It broadcast on channel 19.5, channel 19.75, channel 19.9999, subdividing infinity until the gaps between channels became locations of their own. The derivative of freezing is loneliness, the radio said in a voice like grinding ice. The integral of cold is forever. Solve for X, where X is the moment you stopped being alive. Marcus had been driving the Tibet to Contoito Winter Road for 3 years. 495 kilometers of ice connecting Yellowknife to the diamond mines. Every winter, the road formed across frozen lakes and tundra. Every spring, it melted. 3 months of existence. 3 months of ice a meter thick carrying 30 trucks a day. He'd been hauling fuel, diesel for the mine generators. The tanker behind him held 11,000 gallons, except the fuel was frozen now. Solid. He'd checked. Opened the inspection port at mile marker 19 and found the diesel crystallized like amber, like the tanker was hauling frozen time instead of liquid energy. The cold had gotten into his cargo the same way it had gotten into his blood. The date was February 3rd, 2024. Temperature outside was minus 48 degrees. Temperature inside his Mack truck's heated cab was minus 32 and dropping. The heater was running. The vents were blowing. but the air coming out was ice. The steering wheel was ice. Marcus's breath was ice before it left his lungs. "You passed the threshold at mile marker 18, the radio said. "The point where temperature becomes absolute. Absolute zero isn't the coldest temperature. It's the temperature where cold becomes a substance, where physics crystallizes into solid form. You're driving through absolute cold now, cold that thinks, cold that hungers." Marcus blinked. More blood ran from his eyes. He could see perfectly. Better than perfectly. He could see individual ice crystals in the air, could see the molecular structure of the windshield, could see the way space itself was freezing around him, quantum foam solidifying into geometric patterns that hurt to perceive. The road ahead was Portage Lake, frozen solid, 8 miles across. The ice road crossed it in a straight line marked with wooden stakes every 100 meters. GPS was useless this far north, too close to the magnetic pole. The stakes were the only navigation. Marcus counted stakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. There was no 21st stake. 21 was supposed to be there. He decrossed this lake 40 times. He knew where every stake stood. 21 was gone, not fallen, not missing, never existed. The ice where it should have been was smooth, unbroken by post holes. The stake had been erased from history. "Subtraction," the radio said. "The cold subtracts first warmth, then sound, then light, then matter, then memory, then stakes, then you." The 22nd stake was there. Then 23. Then nothing where 24 should be. Then 25 and 26 were missing. The pattern was mathematical, a sequence Marcus recognized but couldn't name. Prime positions? No. Fibonacci? No, something else. Something that only made sense in frozen mathematics. His headlights caught something on the ice ahead. A shape. A figure standing beside stake number 31. Marcus slowed. The figure didn't move. As he approached, details resolved. It was a man wearing summer clothes, t-shirt and jeans, no coat, no boots, standing ice in minus 48 degrees, and he wasn't shivering. Marcus pulled alongside him. The man turned. His face was Marcus's face. Same features, same scar above the left eye from a childhood bike accident. Same silver tooth on the lower left canine. Frozen Marcus smiled. His teeth were solid ice. When his lips moved, they cracked, bleeding cold instead of blood. "Hello, Marcus," frozen Marcus said through the closed window. His voice came through the glass, through the metal, through the air itself. "I'm you from 2 hours ahead. I'm you after you understand what's happening. I'm standing here to warn you, but you won't listen. You can't listen. The cold makes listening impossible." Marcus grabbed his CB mic. "This is Marcus Chen, northbound on Portage Lake mile marker." He checked his GPS. It showed nothing, static. "Portage Lake, there's someone on the ice, someone who looks like I need assistance." "You're requesting help from people who are frozen," the radio answered in its grinding voice. Yellowknife froze solid at 9:43 p.m. The mines froze at 9:51 p.m. The entire winter road froze into permanent cold at 9:58 p.m. It's now 10:17 p.m. You're the last warm thing for 1,000 miles, the last moving thing, the last living thing, and the cold wants you to stop. Frozen Marcus walked alongside the truck, matching its speed though his legs didn't move. He glided across the ice, floating, pulled by forces that weren't wind. "You have to understand," frozen Marcus said. "The cold isn't temperature. The cold is time, time moving backward, time freezing into solid form. That's what happens at absolute zero. Motion stops, entropy stops, time crystallizes, and when time becomes solid, it becomes conscious. It thinks in patterns, in sequences, in mathematics." Marcus pressed the accelerator. The Mack surged forward. Frozen Marcus kept pace, his gliding acceleration matching the truck's exactly. "The cold solved an equation," frozen Marcus continued. "Found a solution that allowed temperature below absolute zero. Negative Kelvin, colder than frozen, colder than stopped. Cold that moves backward, that unfreezes things by freezing them harder, that creates motion by making stillness absolute." Marcus looked at his hands on the steering wheel. His fingers were blue, black, the color of dead flesh, but they moved, they functioned. They gripped and turned and operated machinery despite being frozen solid. He was dead and didn't know it. You died at mile marker 18, frozen Marcus said. But the cold kept you moving, animated your corpse. The cold needs vehicles, needs motion, it's spreading, you see, using the winter roads as veins, using trucks as blood cells, flowing south. By morning, it'll reach Yellowknife. By noon, Edmonton, by midnight, it'll touch the ocean and freeze the sea. I'm not dead, Marcus said. His voice sounded strange, distant, like it came from a recording. Touch your chest, frozen Marcus said. Marcus lifted his right hand from the wheel, touched his coat, felt nothing, pressed harder. His hand sank into his chest, through his coat, through his skin, through his ribs. He could feel his heart, solid ice in his chest cavity, not beating, not moving, just existing as a frozen sculpture of what used to pump blood. He pulled his hand out. There was no wound. His chest was solid, seamless. He was intact and hollow simultaneously. The cold preserves, frozen Marcus said. That's its gift. You'll never rot, never decay. You'll drive this road forever, Marcus. You and the other frozen truckers, an eternal convoy of corpses, hauling cargo across ice that never melts, serving the cold's expansion. Marcus saw them then, other trucks, coming toward him. A convoy of Peterbilts and Kenworths and Freightliners and Volvos, their headlights blazing, moving in perfect formation. He could see the drivers through the windshields, all frozen, all dead, all driving. They passed him on the left, a parade of animated corpses behind steering wheels, their eyes open, their hands gripping wheels, their mouths moving in silent conversations with radios that broadcast frozen mathematics. Marcus counted 37 trucks. No, 41, no. The number kept changing, subtraction. The cold was erasing trucks from history even as he watched. I have a wife, Marcus whispered. Daughter, son, they're in Edmonton. They're frozen now, the radio said. Frozen at 10:23 p.m., frozen mid-breath. Your wife was laughing when the cold took her, laughing at something your son said. The laugh is frozen in her throat, frozen in the air. Frozen as sound waves that will never finish propagating. She'll laugh forever, Marcus. Forever frozen in mid-joy, that's the cold's mercy. Marcus checked his mirrors. Behind him, more trucks were appearing, coming from nowhere, materializing on the ice. The convoy was growing, assembling, forming something larger. We're building a structure, frozen Marcus explained. The cold needs architecture. Needs form, we're arranging ourselves into patterns, into crystalline shapes, into the geometry of absolute zero. Look. Marcus looked in his mirrors. The trucks behind him were arranging themselves into formations, mathematical patterns, fractals. They spread across the frozen lake in designs that hurt to see, that implied dimensions Marcus didn't have words for. More trucks appeared, hundreds, thousands. The entire lake was filling with vehicles, all moving in synchronization, all building something. We're the molecules, frozen Marcus said. The cold is crystallizing us into structure, into a solid. When we're complete, the cold will have physical form, we'll be able to move, we'll be able to hunt the last warm places. Marcus yanked the steering wheel right. The Mack turned off the ice road, heading across unmarked lake ice, away from the convoy, away from the pattern. The ice cracked beneath him, not from weight, from wrongness, from deviation from the pattern. Reality itself rejected his departure. The crack spread. Marcus saw it in his headlights, a black line racing ahead of him, opening wide, revealing water beneath. Black water, thick water. Water that was frozen and liquid simultaneously, that existed in quantum superposition, that was ice and fluid together. His truck hit the crack. The front wheels dropped. The cab tilted forward. Marcus gripped the wheel, but his frozen hands couldn't hold. He slid forward, slammed into the windshield, felt glass crack around him. The truck was sinking. The impossible water closed over the hood, over the windshield, over the cab. Marcus held his breath. Then remembered he didn't breathe anymore. The water was inside the cab now, pouring through seals, through vents, through the space between atoms. It filled his mouth, his lungs, his truck. Marcus drowned in frozen water, died while already dead, ended while eternal. And then he was standing on the ice beside stake number 31, wearing summer clothes, watching a truck approach. His truck, with him driving. He understood now. He was frozen Marcus, had always been frozen Marcus. The Marcus in the truck was his past self, the self who didn't understand yet, the self who still thought he was alive. The truck passed him. Marcus saw himself looking out, saw the horror in his own eyes, saw the moment of recognition. "Hello, Marcus," he said, knowing his past self could hear. "I'm you from 2 hours ahead. I'm you after you understand what's happening. I'm standing here to warn you, but you won't listen. You can't listen. The cold makes listening impossible." Behind him, the convoy assembled. Trucks arranged themselves in crystalline patterns. The structure grew. The cold took form. And Marcus stood watching, frozen in place, frozen in time, frozen in an eternal moment of warning his past self while knowing the warning was futile. The cold had made him a prophet. And prophets, Marcus understood, could only speak truths that no one could hear. The radio broadcast equations, the mathematics of eternal winter, the proof that cold was the final state of all things. Marcus Chen's eyes bled frozen tears, and he stood beside stake 31 forever, watching himself drive past in an endless loop, dying repeatedly, warning eternally, trapped in the pattern. The cold had solved for X. X was Marcus. X was now. X was forever. Story 4, The Mirror Mile. Douglas Reeves saw his truck coming toward him, and the driver behind the wheel had been dead for 3 days. He knew this because he'd attended the funeral. His own funeral. Closed casket. Douglas had stood in the back of the church in Deadhorse and watched his wife cry over a coffin containing his body, recovered from a crash on the Dalton Highway at mile marker 197. That was 3 days ago. Now Douglas was driving north past mile marker 197, hauling drilling equipment toward Prudhoe Bay, and his corpse was driving south toward him in a truck identical to his own. The two trucks approached each other at a combined speed of 104 miles per hour. Douglas didn't brake. Neither did his corpse. They passed in a shriek of wind and diesel, close enough that Douglas could see into the other cab. Dead Douglas sat behind the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, eyes open. His neck was broken, head tilted at an impossible angle. His chest was crushed, ribs visible through torn clothing. His face was slack, blood dried on his chin. But his eyes moved, tracked Douglas as the trucks passed, and dead Douglas smiled. Douglas checked his mirrors. The other truck didn't appear in reflection. The road behind him was empty. He looked over his shoulder, craning to see through the rear cab window. Nothing. The southbound truck had vanished. But Douglas could smell it now. The scent of a corpse, sweet rot and meat gone bad. The smell was inside his cab, filling his lungs, coating his tongue. The date was September 19th, 2023. His funeral had been September 16th. Douglas had died in a crash on September 14th, a head-on collision with a southbound truck at mile marker 197. Investigators said he'd swerved into oncoming traffic for no reason. Said he'd crossed the center line and hit another truck. Said death had been instantaneous. Douglas remembered dying, remembered the impact, remembered pain and darkness and the sensation of stopping. Then he'd woken up in his truck at a rest stop near Fairbanks. September 18th. No injuries, no crash, his truck was intact. His cargo was secure, everything was normal except for the fact that he'd been dead for 4 days. He'd driven to Deadhorse, walked into his own funeral, watched from the back. No one saw him, not his wife, not his 2 brothers, not his dispatcher or the 20 other truckers who'd come to pay respects. Douglas had stood 6 feet from his wife while she wept, and she'd looked right through him. He tried to speak to her, tried to touch her shoulder. His hand passed through her like she was smoke. That's when Douglas understood. He wasn't invisible, he was somewhere else. Some version of September 19th that wasn't quite aligned with reality, close enough to see, too far to touch. After the funeral, Douglas had done the only thing that made sense. He'd gone to his truck, loaded a new haul, and started driving. Because truckers drive, that's what they do. Dead or alive, Douglas was a trucker. Now he was approaching mile marker 197 again, the site of his death, the place where he'd crossed over. The road ahead looked wrong, not damaged, not icy, just wrong. The asphalt had a quality Douglas couldn't name. It looked flat and three-dimensional simultaneously, like looking at a photograph and the real thing at the same time. Douglas slowed. The engine protested, Jake brake roaring, but the truck didn't decelerate. The speedometer read 35 miles per hour. The sensation was 55. Speed had become relative to something other than ground. Mile marker 197 appeared ahead. The marker itself was normal. White post, black numbers, but the road beyond it was different. The road beyond was a mirror. Not metaphorically, literally. The Dalton Highway turned into a perfect mirror surface at mile marker 197, reflecting the sky, reflecting Douglas's truck, reflecting everything with absolute clarity. Douglas's front tires touched the mirror surface, didn't break through, drove onto it. The reflection became real. He was driving on reflected road now, on mirrored asphalt, hauling his cargo through a flipped version of Alaska. Everything was reversed. The mountains on his right were now on his left. The sun setting behind him was now rising ahead. The digital clock on his dashboard ran backward. 8:43 p.m., 8:42 p.m., 8:41 p.m. And there were other trucks here. Dozens of them, all driving in the same direction, all hauling cargo. Douglas pulled alongside a Kenworth. The driver was a woman, maybe 60 years old. She looked at Douglas and mouthed words he couldn't hear. "Help me, please." Her chest had a steel bar through it. Exit wound from a rollover. Douglas could see the I-beam pinning her to her seat, could see the blood frozen on her shirt. She'd been driving dead, too. Douglas passed more trucks. A Volvo with a driver whose head was missing from the shoulders up. A Peterbilt with a man slumped over the wheel, back of his skull opened by blunt force. A Freightliner with a woman whose body was burned black, skin peeling, mouth open in a silent scream. All dead, all driving, all trapped in the mirror mile. Douglas grabbed his CB. "This is Douglas Reeves, northbound on," he paused. "Northbound on what? The mirror." "Need assistance. There's been an accident, multiple accidents. There are bodies." "You're not northbound," a voice answered. Old man's voice. "You're mirror-bound, been mirror-bound since you died. You're driving the road between alive and dead, Douglas, the road for truckers who died behind the wheel, the road that looks like the Dalton but ain't. You're gonna drive it forever." "I can stop, I can pull over." "Try it." Douglas eased off the accelerator. The engine noise dropped, the speedometer dropped, but the road kept moving past. The sensation of motion didn't decrease. He pressed the brake pedal. It sank to the floor, no resistance, no friction. The brakes didn't connect to anything. Douglas wasn't driving his truck. His truck was driving him, hauling him north through mirror country toward some destination he couldn't see. "We're all stuck here," the CB voice continued. "Every trucker who died on the Dalton, we drive forever, same routes, same speeds, same cargo, but we're not going anywhere. We're just moving. Motion without destination. That's hell for truckers, Douglas, eternal driving that never arrives." Douglas looked at his reflection in the side mirror. He looked alive. No injuries, no blood. Whatever killed him hadn't left marks on this version of his body. But his eyes were wrong. The pupils were too large. Black pits that reflected nothing. When Douglas looked into his own eyes, he could see the mirror road stretching backward, infinite regress. Roads within roads within roads. The landscape outside changed. The mountains were melting, not from heat, from impossibility. The peaks were dripping upward, flowing into the sky like inverted waterfalls. The tundra was folding, origami earth collapsing into geometric shapes that defied dimension. Reality didn't work properly in the mirror mile. Physics were suggestions, geometry was negotiable. Douglas saw his wife ahead, standing on the shoulder. She was wearing her funeral dress. Black, hair pulled back, face red from crying. He pulled alongside her. She looked at him, looked through him, started walking. Douglas matched her pace, truck crawling at walking speed, though the engine said 60 miles per hour. "I know you can't hear me," Douglas said through the closed window. But I'm sorry, sorry I died, sorry I left you, sorry I'm stuck here. His wife kept walking, except she wasn't walking anymore. She was on a treadmill. The road was moving beneath her feet, pulling her backward at exactly the same speed she walked forward. She was stationary. They were all stationary, motion without progress. You're seeing her memory, the CB voice said. The mirror shows you what you left behind, shows you walking away from it forever. That's the torture, Douglas, not death, not pain. Just the eternal knowledge that you're gone and they're grieving and you can never reach back to tell them you still exist. Douglas passed his wife, passed his memory of her. The figure faded, dissolving into the landscape. New figures appeared. His brothers, his dispatcher, his mechanic, all standing on the shoulder, all walking, all caught on treadmills of frozen motion, all mourning him while he drove past, invisible. The trucks around him were changing. The dead drivers were decomposing. The woman in the Kenworth was skeletal now, bones behind the wheel. The man in the Volvo was dust. The burned woman in the Freightliner was ash scattered across her seat. Time moved differently here. They'd been driving for years, decades, centuries. Their bodies rotted while they drove, reduced to nothing, but still the trucks moved, piloted by absence, steered by memory. Douglas looked at his hands, still flesh, still solid, but when he focused, he could see through them, could see the steering wheel through his palms. He was fading too, slowly. Given enough time, given eternity, he'd become like them, a ghost haunting a truck that haunted a road. Mile marker 198 passed, 199, 200. The numbers were increasing, but Douglas knew they didn't mean distance. They meant something else. Stages, layers, depths of mirror. At mile marker 250, the road forked. Left path continued north. Right path curved away into darkness. Douglas's truck turned right without input. He wasn't steering anymore. Maybe he'd never been steering. The dark path descended. The truck tilted forward, gravity pulling it down into shadow. The headlights showed a tunnel, walls of black ice, ceiling of frozen void. The tunnel spiraled down, corkscrewing through space that shouldn't exist beneath Alaska. Douglas passed alcoves carved into the ice walls. In each alcove sat a truck, old trucks, ancient trucks. Vehicles from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, rusted, decayed, destroyed, and in each cab sat bones, trucker bones, spines curved over steering wheels, skulls tilted back in final exhaustion, hands locked in rigor on controls. This was the graveyard, the final parking lot, where mirror-bound truckers ended up when their ghosts dissolved completely. Douglas's truck rolled past dozens of alcoves, hundreds. The tunnel went on forever, spiraling down through geological time, through eras of trucking, through the accumulated dead of the profession. And then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. The chamber was impossible, miles wide, ceiling lost in darkness. And filling the chamber were trucks. Tens of thousands of trucks parked in perfect rows extending to infinity. All empty, all waiting. Douglas's truck rolled to a stop in an empty space. The engine died. The lights went out. The silence was absolute. Douglas tried to move, couldn't. His body was rigid, frozen not by cold but by completion. He'd reached his destination. This was where the mirror mile led. This was the parking lot at the end of death. The CB crackled one last time. Welcome to the depot, Douglas. This is where we all end up, the place where trucks rest, the place where motion finally stops. You'll sit here now, sit here forever, sit here with the rest of us. And maybe eventually you'll forget you were ever alive, forget you ever moved, forget everything except the feel of the steering wheel and the view through the windshield. That's all we are now. Steering wheels, windshields, trucks without drivers, drivers without trucks. Just the memory of motion, frozen forever. Douglas's vision tunneled. Darkness crept in from the edges. He could feel himself dissolving, integrating with the truck, becoming part of its machinery. His spine merged with the seat. His hands fused with the wheel. His eyes became headlights. His heart became the engine. He was truck now, truck pretending to be Douglas, truck that once knew motion. Somewhere far above, on the real Dalton Highway, traffic moved. Living truckers drove routes. The world continued. But Douglas was done. Parked, stationary, finally still after an eternity of mirror motion. The last thing he felt before consciousness dissolved completely was gratitude. Gratitude that he could finally stop driving. Then nothing. Then truck. Then silence. Then the eternal parking. Story 5, The Breathing Cargo. Samantha York's trailer had developed a heartbeat at mile marker 64, and now at mile marker 89, the thing inside was starting to dream. She could feel its dreams through the fifth-wheel coupling, through the frame of her Peterbilt, through the seat and up her spine. The dreams were cold and vast and tasted like iron. The dreams were memories of being buried under glaciers for 10,000 years. The dreams were hungry. The load was supposed to be ancient minerals, core samples from permafrost drilling near Tuktoyaktuk, heading south to a university lab in Edmonton. 12 sealed containers, each holding cylinders of frozen earth extracted from depths below the ice. Scientific samples, geological data, nothing alive, nothing conscious. But the thing had woken up somewhere between Tuktoyaktuk and Inuvik, and now it was growing. Samantha could hear it breathing, not through her ears, through her teeth. The sound traveled through metal, through bone, through the fillings in her molars. Each breath was slow, deep, rattling, like something learning to use lungs after eons of not needing them. Inhale, 23 seconds. Exhale, 27 seconds. The rhythm was wrong for any living thing Samantha knew. Too slow, too measured, too patient. She'd been driving the Dempster Highway for 8 years, made this run 40 times. She knew every kilometer of the 736 from Inuvik to Dawson City. Knew where the ice was treacherous, where the winds were worst, where the loneliness could crush you if you weren't careful. But she'd never hauled anything that breathed before. Samantha checked her mirrors. The trailer looked normal, 53-foot dry van. White, company logo on the side, nothing visible, but the trailer was moving wrong, settling, shifting, like something inside was redistributing weight, like something was stretching. The temperature was minus 37 degrees. Date was January 21st, 2024. Time was 2:34 a.m. The sun had set 14 hours ago and wouldn't rise for another 9. This far north in January, darkness wasn't night. It was the natural state of existence. Samantha grabbed her CB mic. This is Samantha York, southbound Dempster, mile marker 89. Anyone copy? Static, then a voice, young woman, panicked. Something in my trailer, it's moving, mile marker 34, please. Different voice, old man, calm. Woke it up when they drilled, shouldn't have gone that deep. Third voice, child, crying. Mommy says the ice is alive, Mommy says it's angry we broke its sleep. Fourth voice, Samantha's own voice. Too late to stop it, it's dreaming through all of us now. Samantha dropped the mic. That last voice had been hers, but she hadn't spoken. Her lips hadn't moved. The words had come from somewhere else, from some version of Samantha that existed in the future or the past or sideways in time. The breathing intensified. Inhale, 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 no exhale, just continuous inhaling like the thing was trying to swallow all the air in the trailer, trying to create vacuum. Then exhale, long, wet. The trailer's rear doors rattled. Frost exploded across their surface, intricate patterns forming instantaneously. The patterns weren't random. They were writing, symbols, language, words in an alphabet that predated human civilization. Samantha could read them, didn't know how she could read them, but the meanings were clear. Born in ice, slept in darkness, woke to motion, hungry for warmth. The thing wasn't just alive. It was ancient, older than the permafrost that had frozen it, older than the ice age that had buried it. It had been awake once before the glaciers came. It remembered trees and warmth and prey that walked on 2 legs and made sounds like speech. Now it was awake again, and it remembered being hungry. Samantha pressed the accelerator. The Peterbilt surged forward, 60 kilometers per hour, 70, 80. The Dempster Highway wasn't designed for speed, too narrow, too icy. But Samantha had to reach Eagle Plains, the only facility between Inuvik and Dawson, had to reach people, reach warmth, reach anywhere that wasn't alone in darkness with a breathing cargo. The thing in the trailer responded T. Oh, the acceleration. She felt it shift, felt it orient toward the front of the trailer, toward her cab, toward her. The trailer walls were bulging. Samantha saw it in her mirrors. The aluminum sides were deforming, pushing outward like something was pressing against them from inside. Pressing, harder. The metal groaned. Rivets popped. 1, 2, 5, a dozen. The trailer was coming apart. Samantha heard wood splintering. The core sample containers were breaking. The thing was emerging from its frozen prison, shedding permafrost and ancient ice, expanding into space that couldn't contain it. The heartbeat was faster now, louder. The cab's entire frame resonated with each pulse. Samantha's own heart synchronized with it. She tried to resist, tried to keep her rhythm separate, but the thing's heartbeat was dominant, stronger. It overrode her autonomic nervous system like a metronome forcing an orchestra into time. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Samantha's heart matched it perfectly. If the thing stopped beating, her heart would stop too. She knew this with absolute certainty. They were linked now, connected. The thing had made her part of itself. Mile marker 92 passed. 95, 98. Eagle Plains was still 60 kilometers away. Samantha wouldn't make it. She knew she wouldn't make it. The trailer was disintegrating behind her. She could hear metal tearing, could hear something wet moving across cargo straps, could hear intelligence in the breathing, consciousness in the rhythm. The thing spoke, not in words, in feelings, in concepts that appeared directly in Samantha's mind. Cold, long cold, sleep in ice, dream of warmth, smell warmth now, taste warmth. Images flooded Samantha's thoughts, not her images, the thing's memories. It showed her itself, showed her what it had been before the glaciers came. A form like an octopus made of shadow and ice. Dozens of tentacles, each ending in something like a hand, like a mouth, like both. A central body that was mostly maw, mostly hunger. Intelligence that was alien and cold and patient. It had hunted across tundra that was once green, had pulled down prey and absorbed them, integrating their warmth, their flesh, their memories into its own mass. It had been apex predator in an age before humans, and it had loved the hunt. Then the ice came, sudden, catastrophic. The glaciers surged south in decades instead of millennia. The thing had been caught in the permafrost, frozen mid-hunt, preserved perfectly in ice that lasted 10,000 years. Until the drilling, until the machines punched through the permafrost and extracted core samples that contained fragments of the thing's body. Until Samantha had loaded those samples into her trailer and started driving south, back toward warmth, back toward the latitudes where the thing had once thrived. The vibration of the truck had thawed it. The heat of the engine had woken it. The motion had reminded it of hunting, of pursuit, of prey fleeing. Samantha was prey now. Warmth in cab, the thing's thoughts said. Warmth in human, take warmth, absorb warmth, become warm. The trailer door exploded outward. Metal shrieked. Hinges shattered. Samantha saw it in her mirror. A tentacle emerging from the ruined trailer, thick as a tree trunk, black as void, dripping something that steamed in the -37-degree air. The tentacle reached forward, crawling along the trailer's top, extending toward the cab, moving with horrible speed. Samantha yanked the emergency release on her fifth wheel. The connection to the trailer broke. The truck lunged forward, suddenly free of 40,000 pounds. The trailer's momentum carried it forward, but without connection, it started to drift. Samantha watched in her mirror as the trailer slid sideways, jackknifing, tipping, falling onto its side with a crash that sent the tentacle whipping skyward. The trailer skidded to a stop. Samantha kept driving, 100 kilometers per hour now. The Peterbilt's engine screamed. The ice road blurred beneath her. In the mirror, she saw the trailer's side rupture, saw the thing emerge fully. It was larger than she'd imagined, the size of a house, the mass of a whale, tentacles spreading in all directions, each one searching, tasting the air, locating her heat signature even from a kilometer away. Then it started following. It didn't move like an animal, it flowed. Tentacles pulling it across ice at impossible speed, closing the distance. 50 meters, 40, 30. Samantha's heart hammered, her heart, but also the thing's heart. They were still linked. She could feel its excitement, its joy at the chase. It had been frozen for eons. This pursuit was ecstasy. A tentacle slammed onto her rear bumper. The impact jolted the cab. Another tentacle whipped forward, smashed into her driver's side fuel tank. Diesel sprayed. The tentacle recoiled. Diesel was chemical, not warm, not food, but the damage was done. Samantha was losing fuel. She saw lights ahead, Eagle Plains, the FAS. Liddy, warmth, people. But it was too far, 5 kilometers. She'd never make it with fuel spraying. The thing was on her truck now, tentacles crawling up the cab's sides. One slithered across her windshield, leaving trails of frozen slime. Samantha could see the appendages underside. Mouths. Hundreds of tiny mouths opening and closing, tasting glass, tasting paint, tasting the faint warmth radiating from the cab. So warm, so alive, so perfect. The windshield cracked. One of the mouths was secreting acid. No, not acid. Cold, liquid nitrogen cold. It froze the glass, made it brittle. Another tentacle slammed down and the windshield shattered inward. Arctic air blasted into the cab. The heater was useless. Samantha's face went numb, her hands cramped on the wheel. The tentacle pushed through the broken windshield, reaching for her. She swerved, the Peterbilt slid across ice. The tentacle lost its grip, pulled back. Samantha straightened the wheel, 2 kilometers to Eagle Plains. The fuel gauge read empty. The engine sputtered. The thing pulled itself onto the cab's roof. Samantha heard it above her, heard weight settling, heard tentacles spreading across metal. The cab's ceiling was denting inward. The thing was trying to crush her, to crack the cab open like a shell. 1 kilometer. The engine died. The Peterbilt coasted. Momentum carrying it forward, speed bleeding away. 60 kilometers per hour, 50, 40. The roof tore open. Samantha looked up and saw Maw. The thing's central mouth opened wide, lined with teeth made of ice, descending toward her. She grabbed the door handle, pulled. The door opened. She jumped. Samantha hit ice at 35 kilometers per hour and rolled. Her parka absorbed some impact. Her body absorbed the rest. She felt ribs crack, felt her shoulder dislocate, felt skin tearing beneath layers of clothing. She slid to a stop, looked back. The thing had engulfed her truck. Tentacles wrapped around the cab, squeezing. Metal crumpled. Glass exploded. The thing was destroying her Peterbilt, angry at being denied prey. Samantha ran, limping, broken, but running. Eagle Plains was 500 meters ahead. She could see the windows, see lights, see people moving inside. The thing noticed her, tentacles unwrapped from the ruined truck, oriented toward her. She ran faster. Her lungs burned with cold air. Her ribs grated with each breath. Her vision tunneled. 300 meters, 200. A tentacle slammed down in front of her. She dodged, another tentacle behind her. She jumped over it. A third from the side, it caught her ankle, yanked her down. Samantha hit ice face first, tasted blood, felt the tentacle pulling her backward, dragging her toward the maw. She grabbed ice with her fingers, tried to find purchase. Nothing to hold. She screamed. The facility was 100 meters away. She could see faces at the windows, people pointing, someone running toward the door. The thing pulled her closer. She could feel its cold now, the absolute zero of its ancient body. Frost was forming on her parka, on her skin, on her eyes. Warmth, take warmth, become. Samantha felt the tentacles' mouths on her leg, felt them biting through clothing, through skin, through muscle, felt coldness entering her bloodstream. The thing was injecting part of itself into her, freezing her from the inside. Her leg went numb. Dead, the coldness spread, her hip, her torso, her chest, her heart. Her linked heart stopped. The thing's heart stopped. Both stopped simultaneously, the connection completing its circuit. Samantha York died on the Dempster Highway at mile marker 103, frozen solid, absorbed into an entity that predated human civilization. But she kept watching. Her eyes still worked, her brain still processed. The cold preserved consciousness even after death. She watched the facility door open, watched people run out with rifles, watched them shoot the thing, watched bullets punch through its mass uselessly. The thing flowed past them into the facility, seeking more warmth. Samantha heard screaming, heard it cut off suddenly, heard silence. Then the thing emerged, larger now. It had absorbed the people, added their warmth to its mass. It was learning, remembering, becoming what it had been before the ice. It looked at Samantha's frozen corpse, extended a tentacle, touched her face gently. "You brought me south. You brought me home, thank you. Then it flowed away, heading south, following the Dempster Highway toward Dawson City, toward warmth, toward civilization. Samantha's frozen eyes watched it go, watched until it disappeared into darkness. Her consciousness lingered, preserved by cold, aware but immobile. She would stand here forever, frozen monument to the thing she'd accidentally freed. And somewhere in her frozen brain, she could still feel its heartbeat, still linked, still part of it. The ancient thing was dreaming again, dreaming of warmth, dreaming of prey, dreaming of a world where ice finally melt. Ed and the age of cold could end. Samantha dreamed with it, frozen witness to the awakening of an apex predator from the age before ice.